Hello everyone! Our project is about color memory representations in V1 and V4. We used the K-Gallant dataset, which consists of fMRI data from humans while they view naturalistic gray images. Our goal was to determine how color memory representations are shared between V4 and V1 and to try to decode these colors using the fMRI voxels. Examples of the gray images are shown here. Our broad questions were about how and where color memory is represented in the brain and what the relationships between different visual regions can tell us about information feedback. Specifically, we decided to test whether we could decode color content from V1 and V4 activation in response to grayscale images. In this presentation, our team will discuss our recolorization and classification processes, as well as future directions for similar projects.
Humans are able to recognize the colors of objects under vastly different illuminations. As part of this process, we use our existing knowledge of what color an object should be to inform our percept. Previous studies have shown that when people view grayscale images of objects with canonical color content, like yellow bananas and red Coke cans, the color of the object can be decoded from both V4 and V1. However, when people are asked to imagine the same object, the color can only be decoded from V4 activation. We wanted to see whether grayscale naturalistic images A. evoked decodable color representations in V4, and B. whether those representations were shared with V1.
The first step we had to take was recolorizing the K-Gallant grayscale dataset. This proved a bit tougher than expected as the images feature diverse sets of subjects featuring complex geometry and lighting alike, and we ended up having to generate 3 different colorized datasets using 2 different colorization algorithms in order to retain a sufficiently large number of images. We generated one set using a deep learning colorization API by Half Sorgswachtratz, and another with the Oldify, a self-attention GAN-based machine learning tool developed by Jason Antek. In the case of the latter, we generated one set using a render factor, which is basically just the resolution at which the image is rendered, of 8, and another with a render factor of 13. We then picked the version of each image that had the most immediately identifiable dominant color, and discarded any images with no such color, leaving us with a final dataset of 1,150 images. We then finished the recolorization process by running k-means clustering on the hue, saturation, and value of each pixel of each image, and picked the nucleus of the largest cluster as our dominant color.
So in the classification process, our intent was to predict dominant RGB color values using information only from V1 voxels, and then again by using V4 voxels. With the appropriate voxels as the input and the dominant RGB values as our labels, we trained 2 separate multi-output lasso regression models, which in turn evaluated to perform better than the other linear models we've observed and tuned hyperparameters with. We made the predictions with our test set, and then plotted the dominant color, the colorized image, and the predictions from the V1 and V4 models beside each other to compare.
When we first saw our root mean squared error values, we were excited about how low they were, around 60 when the maximum error in RGB space is 442. However, our mentor pointed out that the color content of our recolorized images was biased towards low saturations, so it was unlikely that we were sampling all of color space. To test whether our regression was catching real differences in color, or just guiding the results towards low saturation values, we shuffled the mappings between our test images and their paired voxel activation patterns, then attempted to predict the dominant color of the randomly paired image. We repeated this process 1,000 times to create a distribution of the RMSE values. Sure enough, our RMSE from the actual test set fell well within the 95% confidence intervals of this distribution, which indicates that we did not accurately predict images' dominant colors from their associated voxel activations in either V4 or V1. If you take a look at the colors we predicted for this rare high saturation image of raspberries, you can see this bias in action.
In the K-Gallant dataset, we obtained many images with mixed color content that produce uncertainty in the recolorization process, For featured experimentation, we suggest utilizing more images focused on strong canonical hue, such as a carrot or a banana, while also taking into consideration simple and complex object shapes that are part of the image. The motivation behind this idea is to not only observe if we can distinguish shapes from the images, but to see if we're not creating shape bias in our color representations, such as observing horizontal lines with blue due to the sky or bodies of water, or green with vertical lines due to trees. Most importantly, due to the high measure of features and complexity of predicting color from voxels, we suggest a more complex model should be explored, such as a neural network, to decode the color representations from high dimensional features.